Hi, I'm McKenna Hellam. I am a model and I have anxiety, depression, and ADHD. I can't really remember not ever having these things. I've had it since I was a little kid. So what I would tell my younger self is that your mental illness isn't all of you. You are not your mental illness. It's only a part of you. And as you grow older, you're going to find ways that are going to help you cope and manage this. My advice to people in a similar situation would to be patient and not be so hard on yourself. Finding the right medication or method or doctor all takes time. It's all about trial and error to see what works for you. One thing may work for someone, but it might not work for you, and that's okay. Just know that there are ways to cope, and there are many different methods, and there's many people out there that you can talk to. Just know that you are not alone and that you'll get through this.
Hey there, viewers! ADHD, or Attention-Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is one of the most common health disorders, especially affecting children. It often lasts into adulthood. It's characterized by a child's tendency to be overactive. People with ADHD find it difficult to pay attention to their work. Focusing on one thing is a big challenge for them. Today's Bestie Talks session is dedicated to discussing ADHD. What are the signs and symptoms? How is it diagnosed? What causes it? How can you manage it? We'll talk about all of these and more. Signs and symptoms of ADHD. ADHD is a complex neurodevelopmental disorder that can impact your ability to work. It can also affect your relationships. The tricky part about ADHD is its symptoms vary. There's no ready-made checklist you can refer to. ADHD is generally diagnosed in kids by the time they're teenagers, but adults can have it too. In fact, about 8% of children and 3% of adults have ADHD. Symptoms for ADHD in children are a bit different than ADHD in adults. Let's discuss them one by one. ADHD in children. Number 1, self-focused behavior. Children with ADHD are often unable to recognize other people's emotions and needs. They find it difficult to wait their turn and may keep interrupting. Self-focused behavior can cause them to interrupt others when talking. They may butt into games they're not part of. This symptom often displays itself during play sessions or classroom activities. Number 2, emotional turmoil. Children with ADHD have a hard time understanding and controlling their emotions. You might see them having outbursts of anger at inappropriate times. Temper tantrums can be a classic ADHD sign. Number 3, fidgeting. Can your child sit still? Usually children with ADHD find it difficult to sit quietly in one place. You'll see them running around, fidgeting, or squirming in their chairs. Forcing them to sit in one place never works. This is especially clear from their inability to play quietly. Number 4, unfinished tasks. It's good when a child shows interests in different activities, but have you paid attention to how long they keep that interest? Children with ADHD take part in a lot of different tasks, but find it difficult to finish them. They might start one project but instantly jump on the next thing that catches their attention. They often start projects and activities they can't complete. Number 5, lack of focus. Do you feel your child doesn't pay attention to you when you're speaking? Children with ADHD find it difficult to pay attention, even when you're speaking directly to them. You'll notice this when you ask them to repeat what you just said to them, and they can't do it. Number 6, task avoidance. The inability to focus on one task can make your child avoid doing stuff that requires some mental effort. Paying attention in class or doing homework becomes challenging for them. Number 7, daydreaming. Daydreaming isn't bad, but daydreaming when you should be doing other things is. There's a big misconception that children with ADHD are simply loud and hyperactive. While this can be true, some keep quiet. You might find your child staring into space, daydreaming, and ignoring the activities going on around them. Number 8, trouble following instructions. Planning and execution aren't really strengths for children with ADHD. They generally find it difficult to follow instructions. You'll often find them making silly mistakes, but don't take them for fools. This is a sign for lack of attention rather than a lack of intelligence. Number 9, disorganized. It can be challenging for a child with ADHD to keep track of the task at hand. You'll find them struggling with homework, projects, and assignments. They just have trouble prioritizing things. Number 10, forgetfulness. Does your child lose their toys often? Are they constantly forgetting important details? Children with ADHD tend to be forgetful. They often turn up at school with unfinished homework. Some even forget to do their chores. So, how is ADHD diagnosed in children? Here's what an expert has to say.
The diagnosis of ADHD is made as a collaboration between a doctor, a parent, and a child's school teacher. The first step in the process is to make sure that the child meets the standard diagnostic criteria for ADHD. The criteria focus on specific characteristics of attention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Some examples of these criteria are failing to pay close attention to details or making careless mistakes in schoolwork, difficulty organizing tasks, being easily distracted by things around them, or fidgeting with their hands and feet or squirming in their seat. To meet criteria, the symptoms that cause the problems have to be present before age 7 and have to be seen in 2 or more settings. That means if a child exhibits those symptoms at home but not at school, or at soccer practice but not at home, then they wouldn't necessarily meet the criteria for ADHD. There also has to be significant impairment in their functioning in those settings that's not accounted for by another type of disorder, such as a mood disorder or an anxiety disorder or learning disabilities.
ADHD in adults. It's not just children who get ADHD. Adults also live with it. Well, many people believe you outgrow ADHD as you get older. Here's what experts have to say.
Years ago, people used to believe that ADHD just went away when you got to be about 12 or 14 years old. And the reason for that is that often those who are hyperactive tend to get less hyperactive as they get a little bit older. But what we now know is that ADHD is not primarily about being hyperactive. Some people who have ADHD have never been hyperactive. And even for those who have been hyper, usually that's the least of it. It's the attention problems that make the most difficulty for most people with ADHD. And what we now know is that those problems with attention often get more difficult as you get a little bit older. Most of the people who are diagnosed in early childhood with ADHD continue to have at least some symptoms as they get older. Sometimes they go well into adulthood. Sometimes some of those symptoms diminish and are not making as much trouble. But this is something which for most people, these attention problems really do make difficulty for them as they're getting older. Usually the hardest times for people with ADHD are junior high, high school, and the first couple of years of college or whatever else they're going to be doing right after high school. Because those are the years when you have the widest range of tasks to do with the least opportunity to escape from the ones you're not that good at.
Untreated ADHD can interfere with a person's ability to carry on with their daily life. This can severely impact their career as well as personal life. It's important to get ADHD diagnosed so you can get proper treatment. Let's discuss the signs and symptoms of adult ADHD. Number 1, lack of focus. The most common symptom of adult ADHD is the inability to focus. It's way beyond just not paying attention. If you have adult ADHD, you're always distracted. You find it hard to listen to others when they're speaking. You overlook details. You may even find it hard to complete tasks and projects on time. Number 2, hyperfocus. If the inability to focus was a problem, hyperfocusing can be even worse. You may become so focused on a task, you're unaware of your surroundings. Hyperfocusing can lead you to lose track of time and ignore people around you. This can be disastrous for your relationships. Number 3, disorganized. Life can be intense and challenging, but for people with ADHD, there's an extra layer of obstacles. You may struggle with organizational skills. Prioritizing your responsibilities is much harder. This lack of organizational skills can spill over into your personal and professional life. Number 4, lack of time management skills. Do you procrastinate a lot? Just like disorganization, you may find it challenging to manage time effectively. You show up late for events. You ignore assignments because they seem boring to you. All of these are signs of adult ADHD. Number 5, forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is one symptom common in both childhood and adult ADHD. The tendency to forget stuff can be much more disastrous in adulthood, as you have so many more responsibilities. You may forget important dates. Imagine what would happen if you forgot to pay your bills on time. Depending on the severity of ADHD, forgetfulness can be mild or intense, but the bottom line is it can negatively impact your career and relationships. People around you may mistake forgetfulness for carelessness or lack of intelligence. This is why it's important to spread awareness about ADHD. The support of loved ones along with the right treatment can do miracles. Number 6. Impulsivity. Adults with ADHD have a hard time controlling their impulses. This could destroy your career and personal relationships. Impulsivity can manifest in several forms. You may say inappropriate things or interrupt people while they're talking. Another dangerous aspect of impulsivity is that it can make you act without consideration of consequences. Rushing through tasks is also a sign. But the biggest revelation comes from your shopping habits. Impulse buying is a classic ADHD symptom. Do you go on wild shopping sprees regularly? Are they so crazy that your finances get hurt? It might be time to get help. Number 7. Emotional instability. Do you feel your emotions are imbalanced? People with ADHD can easily become bored. This boredom makes them crave excitement. This sometimes leads to stupid decisions you may regret later. People with ADHD are often unable to handle small frustrations. Slight disappointments can bring on depression and intense mood swings. Untreated emotional issues can further complicate your personal and professional life. Number 8. Negative self-talk. Are you critical of yourself? It could be a sign of ADHD. Being too critical can lead you to have a negative self-image. This can further affect your ability to concentrate, and your work and relationships may take a serious hit. Adults with ADHD often view difficulties and discomfort as personal failures. They end up seeing themselves in a negative light. This could lead to a number of other mental health problems like anxiety and depression. Number 9. Lack of motivation. Do you feel drained of all your energy, as if all of a sudden you've lost your will to do anything? Feeling unmotivated can be a sign of adult ADHD. Lack of motivation, coupled with other symptoms like procrastination and poor organizational skills, can make life hard for an adult with ADHD. This is especially true at work. It becomes exceptionally difficult for them to complete a project within a set deadline. Number 10. Anxiety, restlessness, and fatigue. Living with untreated ADHD is a huge challenge. Your internal motor just won't shut off. As a result, you keep moving and doing things. This leads to frustration and irritability when you can't do something right away. Restlessness resulting from this behavior can cause anxiety. In fact, anxiety is a very common symptom of adult ADHD. Your mind may get stuck in a rut and keep playing worrisome incidents on repeat. Restlessness in adults can be easily identified through their tendency to move around frequently, tap their hands or feet, or shift in their seats. To put it plainly, they find it difficult to sit still. Guess what all of this restlessness can do to you? Make you feel drained and fatigued. Feeling tired is a common concern for adults with ADHD. Hyperactivity and lack of proper sleep further aggravate the situation. Certain ADHD medications may also make you feel tired. In that case, you need to speak to your doctor. They may prescribe you a different medicine that suits you. So, what causes ADHD? The exact causes of ADHD are unknown, but current research has shown that genetics play an important role. Outside of genetics, other suspected causes of ADHD include premature birth, low birth weight, brain injury, alcohol use during pregnancy, exposure to environmental risks during pregnancy or at a very young age. Treatment. The best way to treat ADHD is to use a combination of medication and behavioral therapy. In the case of children, behavioral therapy is best, along with training for parents. This is the first line of treatment before trying medication. If there's no improvement, the doctor will recommend meds. A good treatment plan involves follow-ups, close monitoring, and making behavioral changes along the way. In the case of adults with ADHD, trying cognitive behavioral therapy is a good option alongside medication. You need to eat a balanced diet and continually work on ways to manage your stress. Also, make sure you get enough sleep at night. Participate in daily physical activities. ADHD and anxiety often go hand in hand. High-functioning anxiety can make you do a lot of bad things. Your diet can also have an impact on your mental health. Let's keep the conversation going with a couple more videos, shall we? Check out 12 things you're doing because of high-functioning anxiety. You should also try 5 foods to avoid if you have anxiety. Go ahead, click one, or better yet, watch both and learn more about anxiety. Did you know about ADHD before watching this video? Let us know in the comments below.